As the coaching search gets closer and closer at West Virginia, we're going to bring on a special guest to talk about it. Who could be the next coach at West Virginia? Is West Virginia a good job? And we're bringing on a friend of the show, Mr. Ethan Bock, and we're going to have that conversation, and we're going to do it right after this word from our sponsor.
This episode of Hoops from the Hills is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time.
With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for.
Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com, or you can come in person today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you.
What is up? This is Couz.
And my name is Mountaineer Paul.
And we present to you
Hoops from the Hills.
What is up? Welcome into another show. Welcome into another episode of Hoops from the Hills. We are very honored today to be joined by a good friend of the show, Mr. Ethan Bock from West Virginia Sports Now. Ethan, how you doing?
I'm good, Couz. Paul, how are you guys doing?
Doing
awesome,
good, brother.
Man.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We've been intending to do this for quite a while, and you've written a couple good articles lately about the coaching search situation, and I thought now would be a good time because that's probably the most popular topic among West Virginia sports fans right now, right?
Yeah, it's going to be we talked about it a little bit before the show. It's going to be next 4 to 6 weeks at least of just constant news just within the program. And I guess it'll be a fun time, kind of flip the page, start a new era, but
right.
I think we're all ready.
Yeah. I think
Maybe
they're in
fill the gap in between now and the spring game.
Yep. That helps.
Yep. Good point. Yep. Helps with content, right, Paul?
Yep.
And I'm sure for you too, Ethan, right? As a writer, you're always looking for new stories and new things to talk about and write about.
Yeah. So no matter any news in the spring, like there's always that gap from March Madness and baseball to football. So anything helps.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Hey, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show, man, obviously West Virginia Sports Now is one place. Where else can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows, like, I'm only really on Twitter at Ethan Bock _. It's my go-to. I think it's just the easiest for all of us to communicate, have our takes, share our facts, opinions, etc. I think it's the easiest way to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. You still doing work over the Portal Report?
Yep. So this quickly on that, we're doing another session with the men's coaches, just trying to promote what we've got, help be that third man to players and coaches. And then this year, we're also trying to get with the women's coaches, do the same thing on the women's side as well.
Awesome. Great stuff, man. Great. And of course, everybody knows that you can find him at WV Sports Now over there with Mike Osti and the rest of the team. They do awesome work. And they're all friends of the show. We love them over here. Paul, I'll let you. I'm sure you got a question for Ethan. I'll let you go first, man.
Real quick on that Portal Report thing. Are you covering basketball, all football, everything on that right now?
So the last 12 months or so, we just really hit men's basketball coaches. Been able to just get high major, mid major, low major, even D2 JUCO coaches subscribe, just play middleman, try to connect them with players. We keep track of every single player that enters the portal. We tried it on the football side. It's way more chaotic on the football side. And I think even with how big the football staffs are and how many players enter, I think that's it's really chaotic right now. But hopefully once all the COVID seniors are gone, it might thin out a little bit. But basketball's our niche for sure.
Gotcha.
Cool.
All right. So on this basketball deal, obviously it's a tough time, and I always like to preface this. I know people probably don't think we are, but I'm not dancing on anybody's grave. I don't like this happening to these guys. I really do love Eilert, the crew he has assembled, especially Jay. And I wish things were different, but they're not, and the writing's on the wall. Big outlets are talking about this coaching search, and we're going to continue to talk about it. And in that vein, I think before the show, you brought up a couple guys that personally I'm just not very happy about. I have read a couple things today, and from good sources, that said that very likely could be some smoke screenage going on here. It happened last time during the search, and the med-veds of the world. Not that they aren't legitimate candidates if you get down to a certain part of the list, but if you're telling me that like the med-ved Kearns, I'll even throw Shirts even there, even though I actually do like him, just based off resume or where we're starting. I'm going to be very disappointed. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe I overestimate the job, but to me, I think Big 12 jobs are like SEC jobs in football, and should be looked at as such. And West Virginia is a very good job, especially where it's been left. The last two coaches were Hall of Fame coaches, and you're talking about having even done a coaching search since Gail Catlett. So because with Dan Dockich, but I mean, that really doesn't count because he was here for 8 days.
We're not allowed to say it. His name's not. We don't say his name on the show.
Oh yeah. Anyway, I say that to say, do you really truly believe that those guys you mentioned are at the top of the list, or could there be names we don't know about? Do you think there's some smoke screens thrown out there? Just curious to know what your gut is on that, or do you really think that those names are legit?
Yeah, I think the core that we all heard over the last few weeks of Byington, Dusty May, Medved, Kearns, I think those definitely have some truth to them. But like you said, like there's definitely some smoke and mirrors with trying to throw people off. I think there could be a couple guys that West Virginia is looking at that nobody's really thinking about, and to kind of throw distraction, you have that core of those four guys that everybody's talking about. But I think there could be 2 to 3 names for sure that nobody's talking about that West Virginia's got their eye on.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on? And I kind of know what your thoughts are, but I want you to elaborate on it. Because you read an article about it. What are your thoughts on? There's a lot of talk there's one segment of fans who want Huggins back. I don't fall in that camp. And there's another segment of fans who want John Beilein back. I do kind of fall in that camp. So, what are your thoughts on bringing either of those guys back?
Yeah, when I wrote about it earlier in the week, it's not a shot at Huggs or Beilein. They're Hall of Fame coaches. Don't get me wrong, but. And maybe it's ageist, but they're in their 70s. I think they're at the tail end of their careers. Beilein hasn't coached college since 2019. Huggs is probably going to get back into it, but at the same time, how long is he going to go for? So it's like it's an unknown of like when are these guys going to retire? But at the same time, it's Huggs helped for what he did during the summer, as bad as it was for him and the university. He was able to help, though, just kind of push this new era quicker and ahead. Mm-hmm. And this is the time for West Virginia to turn that page, begin a new era, try to find their next Beilein, try to find their next Huggins. So why wouldn't West Virginia take advantage of that? I just think there's too much uncertainty with both of how long they're going to go coaching for. And Beilein hasn't really dealt with the portal NIL like Huggs has. So that's my question with him as well.
Right. And that's fair. I know, Paul. Yeah. I think Paul agrees with you.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you look at it. I mean, do we really want to have to do this again in 2 or 3 years? I just don't think we do. At the end of the day, if Beilein was even let's say he was 65, I could probably buy that. But like they're just to get to a certain number where he's 71, like you sign him to a 4-year deal. He's 75 years old coaching high level Big 12 basketball. It's just, I don't see how you keep up with Jerome Tang, the energy these guys have. You've got to match it, and I don't know that a guy that age can do that. Certainly I wouldn't bet on it with Beilein, but my gut says I would take a Jerome Tang, in this day and age. It's just what you got to have, a coach like that. So for me, I'm with you in that. I just, I wish him all the best. I would love to see what Hugs could do. If he got the right job, I certainly think he could do something with it. In a short amount of time, especially like maybe like a MAC team or a mid-major team or something like that, where he could just go kind of have what he wanted to do. He could definitely build a team because he doesn't recruit high anyways. The kind of players he brought to West Virginia, quite frankly, could have went to mid-major teams anyway. I mean, he really recruited at that level a lot of the time. Sometimes he recruited more than that too. But so anyway, on to a couple. I wanted to bring up a name that I'm just curious about. Have you heard the name Thad Matta any? Because that's a name I know he's a Butler alum and he's there for a second time. And yes, they are I think they're 16, 17 games, something like this year. He's only the second year, though. He's building that thing. Obviously, he's a Hall of Fame coach as well. Just curious how you would feel about a guy like Thad Matta. He's in his mid-50s, similar to Chris Mack. Obviously, look what he did at Ohio State. He's the winningest coach ever there. Some people speculated he might actually go back there as well. So it seems like he might be willing to move on from there again. But just curious what you thought about a name like Thad Matta.
Yeah, Thad Matta is a name that is one of the names, it's one of a wild card that nobody's really brought up yet.
Yeah.
But like your points, he's an alum of Butler. He's just kind of just trying to get Butler back on track to what they were in the 2010s and the late 2000s. And to me, if I'm him, I stay at Butler, or if the opportunity is given and Ohio State strikes on everybody, you go back to OSU.
Yeah,
I think he's comfortable at Butler and staying in the Big East because that's a hell of a conference. I just think he fits in that conference better than if he would come over to the Big 12.
Makes sense. What are your thoughts on Steve Forbes? Is he realistic or no? From Wake Forest.
Yeah, I think if you're hoping as a West Virginia fan that they could hire a Power 5 or Big East coach, I think Steve Forbes is one of your top guys. Like what he's done at Wake Forest, he hasn't been able to make the tournament, but to get him back on track to at least be able to get in the talks again of making the NCAA tournament, and just the way he's been able to, he's not getting high-level transfer classes, but he's been able to get these underrated transfers and build them up to ACC first teams and second teams, and then get them to the league. Like coaches can develop high school kids well, like in traditional college basketball, but Steve Forbes is like the new age of like developing transfer guys. And it's like Hunter Salas this year, for an example, came over from Gonzaga, pretty much like a little starter role player type role, but now he's one of their go-to guys. And he did this with Williams from Oklahoma a couple years ago. Now he's in the league. I think Steve Forbes is a hell of a just transfer portal developer, which is like a new term in this age. But I think if you're a West Virginia fan and you hope they get a Power 5 guy, not a mid-major, I think Steve Forbes is one of your more realistic guys, but at the same time, I feel like Wake Forest is going to try to lock him down.
Yeah, I would think so. A lot of people look at that as more of a lateral move because obviously you're going ACC to Big 12, or but and I don't follow Wake Forest basketball that closely, but from what I've read, I'm not sure Wake Forest has the resources and stuff that West Virginia does as far as NIL and as far as facilities and everything, really.
Proud tradition.
Is that accurate?
The facilities for sure. It's the NIL is interesting there. I obviously this year West Virginia, or the last couple of years, West Virginia's kicked butt with NIL in basketball. But I think Wake Forest is making that effort to improve their NIL to the point where they're almost in that tier of, they could actually go toe to toe with some of these Power 5 guys in bidding wars. So it's better than I think what people think, but that's their efforts of trying to continue to grow it.
Do you think the NIL will fall or will decline without Hugs? Do you think he was a big reason we had the strong NIL game?
Yeah, for sure. I think overall West Virginia has good NIL compared to other Power Fives when you look at football, women's basketball, baseball, etc. But like women's basketball, I've heard has really good NIL for women's basketball, and being in basically the Big 12, which is still a pretty good conference for women's hoops. So I think West Virginia overall has really good NIL, but yeah, Hugs had a lot to do with what the men's basketball program was bringing in.
Yeah. Hugs had some really, really tight relationships with a lot of donors from everything I've heard and read. And a lot of those donors wanted to donate money because of him. So I'm hoping that, our NIL doesn't take a nosedive. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully Ren's able to keep some of that money flowing in, or you know what I'm saying? Leverage those relationships. Obviously, Ren's not responsible for NIL, but he is responsible for having the relationships with the donors who give to NIL, right? I mean, it's kind of all connected. The other article you wrote was about how good of a program. There was an article out there about how good of a program West Virginia was, and you wrote an article about something an ACC coach said. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So Jamie Shaw over at On3 Sports, he's their national recruiting analyst over there, and he surveyed a bunch of Power 5 coaches from just different schools. They're all anonymous, but it was just interesting, kind of just looking at what the coaches told him. And I looked at one ACC coach say Dustin Kearns from App State would win here. That'd be the best fit, which is interesting because he would be a good fit, but I have questions about making that jump, and he might be able to, but I think year one's going to be a little tough for anybody. But
yeah,
but it was interesting seeing what the other coaches were talking about, just with the NIL, with Hugs, without Hugs, facilities, the fan base, recruiting base, etc. It was a really interesting piece, and West Virginia is definitely top 25, 30 job. They had so much momentum the last 2 decades with Beilein and Hugs.
Yeah.
And now they're in this weird stage. They're in this tier list of like, they're not a blue blood, but they're also, they have the opportunity to not be a stepping stone.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Good way to put it. Yeah,
absolutely. Great way to put that. And especially if Yormark continues to do what he's doing, I have no doubt that things will only get better for teams in the Big 12 moving forward. So talk about some of your personal favorite guys if you can. Yeah, I mean, obviously we can edit that out of there if you don't want to talk about it, but I'm just curious, who is your, if you had your druthers, who is the guy that you want to see get this job?
I have 2 guys in mind. One's a mid-major. Another one's technically a mid-major, but he's a Power 5 coach. Nico Medved from Colorado State. I like what he's done there. He's shown most consistency compared to the other mid-major guys that have been thrown around. He is 500 in Mountain West play, but at the same time, Mountain West might be able to get 5-6 teams into the NCAA tournament. But Nico Medved has some Morgantown connection. His wife, I think we know this, she was raised here. They got married at the Marriott down by the river. So he's at least got a connection. He showed most consistency in mid-major play compared to these other guys who had to rebuild their programs. And another guy, technically mid-major, but Will Wade at McNeese. We've talked about him a little bit before the show. Just he's a Power 5 coach. There's no doubt about it. Rebuild VCU. He kept VCU afloat. Went to LSU, got them really going, and then he did some pre-NIL stuff illegally. So he's got that baggage on him, but at the same time, he's a hell of a coach. And I think if West Virginia can if they want to pull the trigger on him, I think that's a home run hire.
Yeah, he's my number one guy. I'm glad you said that. I could have him at 1A and Chris Mack at 1B really at this point, and that's assuming that like a guy like Mick Cronin is not available or something crazy like that, or like Joe Mazzulla gets fired or just something crazy. But like from what's like realistic, those are the two guys that I would be. You'd see me, I'd be bouncing around happy for a couple of months over a hire with one of those two guys, So I'm with you on the Will Wade deal, and he's 41 years old. That's another thing. Do you worry about being a stepping stone? Yeah, but at the end of the day, I do think he would improve the program to the point to where we would be in a really good spot whenever he left, whatever it was.
Yeah, I think West Virginia is historically a great program, but right now you don't know who's going to be on the team next year. You don't know who the coach is going to be. So if you at least could hire a coach, worst case scenario, to get this program back rolling, I think West Virginia fans would be okay being a stepping stone one time, getting some momentum over the next 5 to 10 years, getting that next coach, and then you can really get momentum going to where you're not a stepping stone anymore.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. My concern with either him or Mac, Wade or Mac, and it's kind of like I think Paul shares it as well, is the baggage that you could say is there with those guys, even though I don't think what they did necessarily is a big deal. At least especially now that a few years have passed since it happened. But I don't know how the West Virginia administration feels about it, especially Gordon Gee, especially after the Huggins situation. Are they going to be willing to hire somebody with any sort of baggage at all? That's my concern. Do you have a feel for that at all, Ethan, or not?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like after what Huggs did, it seems like they would want a guy who they can trust, kind of like a Josh Eilert. He's not gonna say anything controversial. He's not gonna do anything stupid. He's not going to do anything to make the university look bad. They could go that route, and it's a really good possibility they go that route, and they go with like a Neil Brown, similar on the football side. They're not going to do anything controversial. And hiring a Will Wade, yeah, it was years ago, but at the same time, it's still a controversial figure, and at least it wasn't like an off the court situation that bad like Huggs.
Right. I agree. I'm not saying West Virginia should hire some guy who's, committed felonies or anything like that, but come on, man. This is 2024. I mean, what he did is legal now, basically.
It's legal now.
Yeah. I mean,
it's like arresting somebody for smoking pot today.
Yeah. I mean, technically it's not, but he can do it through the collective, It's just, I don't know. I don't think it's that big a deal anymore. The show calls I'd worry about a little bit, but it's only, what's he have, one more year on that?
Yeah, one more year.
It would limit scholarships for one more year. It would.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I mean,
well, if the NIL is strong enough, they could if the donors will step up and donate NIL money, they could actually overcome that with just give guys, bring walk-ons in and pay their scholarship essentially through NIL. That's one way you could do it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Wade's one of the guys that he's one of the few names that I see the donors really getting behind to where they're not plummeting. I think Wade's really one of the only guys I can see that happening with. Maybe you guys have different names that you could see that happening.
But would he take the job? That's another question. Would he even take the job? I've read a couple different things on that. Some people say that he has decided. Some people theorize that he's decided to stay at Nice until this show cause is done before he goes anywhere. He doesn't want to limit himself in the Power 5 setting with the scholarship cap that he's given with this show cause and everything. So that's something I've read a few different places where, you got to be careful handicapping yourself right off the gate like that, especially in the Big 12. So that's something I think will come into play big time for that. But like you said, man, he's the home run for sure. And all you worry about is kind of the liberal-esque thinking on the university side. I think they'll probably lean safe, but you never know. Would love to see it. Would love to see Will Wade, man, for sure. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I was trying to stall for a second so I can remember what I was going to say. I've read that there's a connection to him in the athletic department somewhere. Have you heard that?
No, I don't think so. How deep does that go?
I don't know, but
Yeah.
this comes from a source of mine, so I mean it's got to be legit. I don't know how deep into it's high level athletic department person is all.
That's the kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I like to go digging for, man. Thank you for that information. I'm like a PI now. I'm gonna have my magnifying glass out. I'm gonna be on Wikipedia, and I'm gonna have every Wikipedia page pulled up in college basketball, man.
Now, just keep in mind, it could be one of the other candidates. I'm almost sure it was Wade. It might be. I'm pretty sure it's Wade. I'll have to look back.
Yeah.
He's been at a lot of schools, a lot of regions, so he definitely knows people at most schools. It's just like it just depends how deep into the department it is and where, I guess.
Right. But having somebody that can stand up for you at all and say, look, he's kind of changed, or he was in his mid-30s when he got that job. I mean, how many people make mistakes in their 30s, So I thought one other argument I've heard on him is, well, why do you think he was winning so much in LSU? Because they were paying guys. But at the end of the day, you got to coach them, you got to develop them, you got to win. It's still LSU, man. That's a brand,
Yeah, he wanted VCU. He was able to just he was able to keep them going after Shaka Smart and just keep that VCU pretty much trail of those coaches just being good coaches and getting up to the next level, and that's exactly what he did. He was able to win there.
He won.
Who was the assistant? I'm sorry, Paul. Did you have something else?
I was just bringing up Greg Marshall, just throwing names out there now. Have you heard of Greg Marshall?
Yeah. Because when you made that statement, you got my wheels turning, man. Who was the assistant AD, the female assistant AD who left a couple years ago? What was her name?
Oh, to LSU. It's gonna drive me insane.
When did she leave?
The problem. It was maybe 2022.
There could have been some overlap.
Yeah.
Because he didn't leave LSU till 22.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the connection. I don't know.
That's a good thought.
Ren could pick up the phone and call her and say, "Hey, what are your thoughts on this guy?"
Seems like the athletic department's just turning over just a lot, especially over the last 2 years. So people leaving like 2021, 22, it's like, wow, she went to LSU.
Forgot all about them.
Yeah.
Well, who was that the other day you didn't even know had left? Alsop.
Rob Alsop. I had no idea I had no idea Rob Alsop was gone.
Yep.
No idea.
Yeah.
And then I see he got a job somewhere. I'm like, what? Because I had heard that they thought they kind of had him in mind to replace Gee when Gee retired. That's what I had read somewhere, that was kind of the succession plan, maybe. So I don't know. Who knows? A lot of turnover at that university in higher positions lately. Paul, do you have anything else for Ethan?
And thanks for coming on and bull crapping with us.
It's
been fun, man. Hope it works out.
Greg Marshall was that was the icing on the cake right there.
Hey, he's only he's in his 60s, so he's not way over the hill. And I've seen his name pop up one or two places just on message boards. And man, he's a good coach. I just think some of the stuff he did was obviously. I think he got in some kind of legal issue. I can't remember what it was, but maybe it's something at where he was at the Shockers. I can't remember. He might have done something there. Either way,
he ended really bad at Wichita. to the point where players are coming out. He did build it.
Yeah. I think it was like a Bob Knight type situation with him. He was just so abusive.
It's stuff you aren't allowed to do anymore as a coach. Is what he was doing.
Rick Pitino threatens to cut people into pieces, apparently. So,
at least his players laugh about it.
One last real quick name I wanted to talk about for just a second.
What do you think about Josh
Schertz? Okay, Schertz. I've watched a bunch of stuff on him today too, just trying to educate myself on these guys before I judge him. And they asked all his players, about him, and man, like a couple of them cried, said he was the most genius basketball mind that they've ever known. And I get that there's some bias there, so I take that into account. But I felt like they were being genuine. And then I watched his press conferences. He is he seems to be a very intellectual guy, so a smart guy. And I gravitate towards those guys. I like that.
He looks like a really genuine dude. Like if you watch any of his stuff, he looks like he's not BSing. But it's the same problem I have with a lot of these mid-major candidates that have been thrown out there. Is like this is his first really, really good year, like where it's on a national level. And it's kind of like Dusty May was that last year. It's like, could he do this again next year at Indiana State? Like if he could win 25 games consecutively, I mean, he's already getting talks now about Power 5 jobs. I mean, what's to say in a year from now, he's taking them back-to-back tournaments, depending on how they do in the tournament this year. If they make the second weekend, that's really impressive. So Schertz is in that same category of, he's a hell of a coach, but could he do this consistently? I don't know. Yeah,
I agree with that one too. That's what concerns me about a lot of these guys myself. Even May, I'm not as high on Dusty May as everybody else is. Did he catch lightning in a bottle and have one? I mean, he's doing okay this year. I'm not saying this year's been bad, but it's nothing like last year. Now he could go. Now he might make a run in the tournament again, and that would change my opinion. But right now, I want to see.
They didn't return everybody. People think they returned everybody. They lost their best player actually. But they returned everybody else. But people like to say he returned every player, but he actually did.
Yeah, that's.
They moved into a better conference too. Like,
yeah, that's true.
USA's a solid mid-major conference, but the American, they lost Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, but just combining basically the American Conference USA, and you still had Memphis thrown in there, and USF's kicking ass this year.
Oh yeah,
so.
There's another name we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
And Pat Kelsey's the one I wanted to bring up. I actually had
why do
someone.
I keep forgetting Kelsey?
Yeah. I've actually heard he was pretty high on the radar. Is there any accuracy to that in your mind?
I don't think as high as the usual candidates. I think I think he could be one of those smoke and mirrors guys of like.
Gotcha.
But he's won more than all the other guys.
Yes. Yeah. He has.
Why, you know what I mean? That's what's weird about it.
I mean, he lost 4 seniors last year with his tournament team. And I mean, they're 21-7 now. They're still having a good year. I think by the time the tournament starts, I think he could gain more momentum then. I just think he lost it from last.
These guys are all being judged in real time, even still. Like, I know they are, but like, you would think Red has his mind made up about a few of these guys by now. Whether or not they win in the tournament or not, it could get better, but you wouldn't think it could get a whole lot worse.
I just think overall for Kelsey, if him getting back to the tournament,
right,
he lost some momentum, but in a couple weeks he could be right back up to where he was last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. With Rian, I got to. I mean, not just him, but I think all ADs. They're looking at this from a 10,000-foot view. They're not going to let 1 or 2 games dictate their opinion on a guy. I don't think.
Right.
But it is also a results-driven business. So you've got to, and you've got to get donors and board members and people like that on board. You've got to have some data, right, to back it up. So I'm sure it goes. I'm sure there's a little bit of both.
Popping up a lot.
He's starting to, yeah. I heard they were kicking the tires on him.
Coach.
Yeah,
that's a tough job. That's a really tough job. Like, I think people don't really put it in perspective. Like, his transfer class wasn't that great because it's really hard to recruit there. And, I mean, he also had a starter recovering from cancer. Like, his best players from Wyoming, and they're second in the Pac-12. Like, hey, that just shows he's not. He can't recruit there because that's a hard job. But the fact that he's got them going to the tournament, that's a coach. That should be National Coach of the Year candidate type. What he's done.
And let's not forget, there's a little bit of connection there. You know, West Virginia hired the volleyball coach from Washington State, and if she's been impressed with what she's seen at West Virginia so far, she may say, "Hey, you know, she could be a advocate."
They know each other. Yeah,
I'm sure they do.
Good
I mean,
point.
these I think all these coaches are in on some of the same meetings and stuff together. You know, I would imagine.
right.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
we get to the end and end up landing on one of the guys I need to go research more about.
No,
There's so many
he's
names to
for
look at.
real.
I think there's a lot of smoke screening, Paul, like you mentioned earlier. I think there's a lot of that going on, man. I think there's names being leaked on purpose, probably, to try to. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
to get other universities to start their process sooner.
Well, West Virginia has always been really good at keeping things quiet. Anyway, stuff just doesn't usually leak from there, which is kind of ironic considering how small of a state this is and how people like to talk. But yeah, stuff still don't leak, so it's pretty impressive, really, how they're able to keep things under wraps like they do.
Yep.
But anyway, I don't have anything else. You guys got anything? Paul, you got anything else for Ethan?
Just 2 or 3 more names.
Oh man!
Well, you could it's crazy. You could put a list. That's how unique this job is. This coaching search will be. Is like we haven't even reached the point of like the Power 5 got teams going on or get poaching from other schools, and so who knows where we'll be in 2 weeks. But the names we've got right now of like 12 to 15, it's pretty good. It's pretty good the amount of effort there's been put in.
Yeah,
not one assistant on the list either. It's been wild.
No,
I think they're trying to. I think Ren's going to want somebody with experience. I think that's one of his go-tos in most coaching searches. That's why he had such a hard time with the coaching wedding thing in baseball. He did not want to do that at first.
I think it would be tough to hire an assistant just based off of like trying to convince the I guess casual fan, hey, we're hiring an assistant. Well, they just had an assistant get promoted last year, kind of thing. So it's hard for them to hire an assistant and really get the fan base to buy into that.
The only way it would work, and I'm not saying I'm for this, but the only if you hire somebody that's got that West Virginia ties, a Deshaun Butler or somebody like that, I think the fan base would like it. I wouldn't, because I want somebody with more experience, but there are a lot who probably would, because of that connection. But other than that, I think you're right. I think it needs to be somebody with head coaching experience and a lot of it, hopefully, and a lot of winning in their background.
Yep.
Ethan, one more time, man. Let everybody know where they can find you and your work.
Yep. So I'll be on Twitter at Ethan Bock _, and you can find my work at wvsportsnow.com. Awesome.
Well, guys,
thanks, man.
We appreciate you. It's been fun. I always enjoy bringing Ethan on. Ethan, if you don't mind hanging around after the show, and we got something else we wanted to talk to you about real quick.
Cool.
But guys, thank you for tuning in, and we're done.